Give it another couple seconds for some more folks to pop on, and then we'll get started.
Well, I'm going to start off by welcoming everyone to the X1 Approach Summer Bootcamp series. We also hope that you join us for the entire series. We're going to be discussing fuel management on August 22nd. We had rescheduled that session. And today in this webinar room, if you've never joined our webinars before, you'll notice that we have a chat mechanism and we have a questions feature mechanism. So please take a moment now to use the chat, introduce yourself, name, title, company. And for questions regarding the presentation, please use the questions feature separately. This allows your questions not to be buried in the chat with conversations, and we want to make sure to answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. So I'll introduce myself while we're waiting. I'm X1's VP of Sales and Marketing, Monica Sardui. And before I hand off the microphone, I just wanted to express how excited we are to continue to host these types of events for you. We are so much more than a technology company. We pride ourselves on having true experts in all of our fields, and our customer support and our onboarding team, our FBO veterans, and starting from the top with our CEO who's hosting today, Jim Wiley. He likes to say he brings over a quarter of a century of experience in general aviation.
I don't like to say that. It makes me sound old.
What?
I said I don't like to say that. It makes me sound old.
Well, you put it on the website, so I reused it today. So, and then we're also going to have a guest speaker today, Greg Johnson from Tuvoli. So we're excited to have him. He's a surprise guest today. And whenever you're ready, Jim, you can take over.
Okay. So how you doing, folks? I'm looking through the list here. We got Sebring, Florida. How you doing, Keisha, sorry. I see a lot of our FBO folks, a lot of the current X1 customers up there. Hey, Carrie, how you doing? Flightline in Ontario, up there in Canada. Jet Centers.
Raleigh.
Well, nice to see a good chunk of the country represented here. I know it's a little early for the West Coasters. So, welcome. Today we're going to talk about the ramp, revolution on the ramp. That's our tagline. That's, as we discussed, we run these every summer. Ran it last year. It's almost funny how much stuff has changed over the past 2 years for us, which is kind of what we're going to talk about. It's what's changed for us and how we're going to adapt to that and what we're doing as an industry to adapt to that. For those folks that don't know me, I'm Jim Wiley. I'm co-founder and CEO of GMS Tech, the company that's built X1. I'm a former line service technician. I think us line techs like to think of us as like Marines. Once you're a line tech, you're always a line tech. I started at Priester in 1995. From there, I went to DB Aviation in Waukegan, became a manager by mistake, got sick of the cold, went down to Charleston, ended up back home in New York, where I'm from, with Millionaire, which was purchased by Atlantic. I was at Atlantic for a while. I was with when we started this. I was with Landmark. I'd spent quite a few years with Landmark. I was a GM at OPF, and I did what we call transition. So I was a transition lead. So when Landmark bought new locations, we'd go to that location and help switch them over. I also, in the middle of all that stuff, I did ground handling at LaGuardia for a little bit. I ran a GSC shop at LaGuardia with like 500 pieces of equipment. I ran a flight school. I did a little bit of charter work. I was very lucky in my career to have done a lot of things in a lot of different places and to learn from a lot of different people. And we've tried to bring those lessons, and it's not just me. This is our whole crew. Our whole crew is made up of some aviation folks, from Caroline, who leads customer service, our SVP of operations, Steve Tubbs, who comes from airport operations and maintenance. I mean, we just, we try to practice what we preach and bring that experience, all the lessons we've learned over all the years we've been doing this, into what we're doing. Obviously, that picture there is a much younger and skinnier version of me at Oshkosh. I think it's around 99 or 2000, somewhere around that time. I was at Waukegan. The guy who used to work with me in Waukegan ended up becoming line service manager at Oshkosh. I got to go up there and work the show. I ran what they called the hard stand for a couple of years, which was the business jets and military jets. Had a lot of fun. Again, great education. And I hope we've taken that stuff, and it's a lot of lessons. It's the good, the bad, how people did things right, how people did things wrong, and seeing how we, as a result, can do things better and use everybody's. I always say I prefer to learn from somebody else's mistakes other than my own. So I'm going to move on here. So one of the things we're going to talk about and is our traffic and the impact that that's had on us operating in FBO and how we're handling that today. This next slide here, we're looking at our activity since 2006. You see the recession in 2008 and the impact of it, dragging to 2009. And you see a steady climb, but look at the tail end of that. Just what we've seen in growth over the past 2 years, what the pandemic has done to our customers has been nothing short of transformational. And let's be honest, we're sitting here talking about revolutionizing the ramp, and it's already happened. It's happening to us, which is one of our issues as an industry. We're always reactive. We're horrible at being proactive, and this change has happened to us, and now in a lot of cases we're caught flat-footed. This is where I'm actually going to turn this over to Greg Johnson for a little bit, and Greg is going to talk about the traffic patterns, what the Part 91 guys are doing, what the charter guys are doing, what it looks like on our customer side of the business. Greg does this every 2 weeks. He runs a webinar where he discusses the industry trends with a large group of people. I'll let him give his take on where the industry is with traffic, and let you tell him about his what he does on his industry trends calls. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So, to your earlier thing with the picture at Oshkosh, you can't really see it because it's washed out, but that's where I am today. So you'll have to apologize if there's loud noise or whatever. There's some fan playing and there's radial engines firing up behind me, but that's all good. So, yeah, for those of you that haven't gotten or aren't on the distribution list for the email that we send out every 2 weeks, I started doing it early in the pandemic when some people sort of said, hey, you collect all this data on aircraft flying all over the US. Would you mind giving us, some insights on what's happening when we were really trying to figure out what was happening as an industry, back in sort of March, April of 2020. And then we were doing it sort of weekly. We've gotten into a cadence of doing it sort of this review on a bi-monthly basis. So we do it after the 15th and then after the end of every month, usually on a Thursday. I'll send out an email with a snapshot of sort of some high-level things on volume for the charter industry and Part 91 and different size classes, and then a whole host of airports that we think are interesting across the U.S. And anyone who gets on the call, can run through the whole list of airports we go through, and I'm happy to share that deck of 50 some odd slides every 2 weeks with anybody who sort of gets on the call and asks for it. If anyone is interested in sort of a daily snapshot, we have that on the website now. If you just go to Tuvoli.com, industry trends, and then on there you can sign up to get on the mail list. We have about 5,000 people at the moment that get that every 2 weeks. So that's high level. Now, if you say what is really going on, today, volume is still above 2021, despite inflation and the price of gas and the stock market not doing so well. What we have seen for the first time so far this year, June came in slightly underneath June of 2021 for the charter market. It was only down by a little bit. And what we've seen now is that's sort of leveled off and stabilized at something slightly less than a 10% reduction from 2021, which is still significantly above 2019 if we want to think about that as a baseline. So I have some charts that'll be in our next update where we've looked at sort of from 2019, 20, 21, and 22. You look at sort of the lines for all of those. Yes, there's been a little bit of a sort of drop over the past couple of months, but I think that we're still seeing unprecedented volume levels across the industry, and it's really, I think, a testament to a new level of resiliency that has worked its way into the industry for a number of levels. I mean, Part 91 is still well above even where we were in 2021. If anything, I would say that the modest reduction in air traffic that we're seeing right now is sort of giving us a chance to sort of catch our breath or catch up to what we've been seeing, because everybody that I talk to, and Jim says the same thing, is struggling with growth related issues, which I think is a good segue back to him and the efficiency that you get out of X1, because nobody that I talk to wants to throw bodies at the problem anymore, and that's what we always used to do. And I think as an industry, we're now starting to sort of catch up and say, hey, we need to use better systems and better information management in order to cope with the increased volume, not just people, particularly because it's hard to find them even if you wanted to.
Thank you.
So on that note, I'll give it back
let
to
me
you,
ask
Jim,
you a question. I'm
thanks.
going to ask you to read your crystal ball here real quick. What with all this information, what does our next year look
Okay.
like?
You're asking for a prediction in a period that's got unprecedented volatility, but I guess I would say, I think what we're seeing is our market has just been tested with, not one sort of challenging event, right? But three simultaneously, right? We've had inflation that's sort of at an unprecedented high. We've had a stock market that's really challenged, and we've had the price of fuel, which drives our industry, right, also at record levels, and yet we're above the year-over-year volume level. So if I were to predict what we're going to see in the next year, it's still, robust performance, probably, at a slightly lower level in some cases than what we've seen before, particularly in charter, where people are, kind of move in and out. But I think, we've got strong fundamentals, right, that are going to drive, the industry as a whole forward in a positive direction. I just don't see how this drops off a cliff with everything that I'm seeing.
Agreed.
Some people that I'm
so
talking
we're going
to
to talk
and the
about a little bit
indicators
about the
that we track.
whys now, I guess. So, I mean, I think our SVP of operations, Steve Tubbs, was supposed to be on the call with us. He's not on the call because he couldn't get home yesterday on the airlines. He's been stuck in Atlanta since yesterday. So, I think the airlines continue to do us a lot of favors. The reduction of city pairs, the cancellations. I mean, they've just done such an awful job that this cohort of people who tested the waters in general aviation during the pandemic, they may have tested the waters back in the airlines. They may have said, oh, well, it's a $2,000 ticket or a $20,000 ticket. Maybe I'll just do the 2,000, and then didn't get where they were going. So, again, I think that did us a huge favor. And, there's an interesting study out there, and I'll find it to back it up. But really, most of these people, the study says 0% of the people that have come into the industry will leave entirely. 47% of them or something like that will end up occasional users of charter, with the remainder being frequent users of charter. So, I mean, you guys are seeing it on the ramps. I mean, I don't think anybody's out there who hasn't, had the impact of this. There's another interesting statistic we have up here on the slide, is that out of all the people that can afford to fly privately, only about 7% of them do. So that our market size, I mean, we're only 7% of the people. And as the technology and operating models change, the way people do business in charter changes, charter becomes more transparent and easier. How much of that, actually, that's I'll poke you with that question there, Greg. Is how much of that 93% may is there any consensus on how what else is coming our way out of that 93%? You're muted still.
I just didn't want to, the things got quiet here for a minute, but it was loud there. I think to some degree, COVID did change that calculus a little bit. We saw, part of the influx that we have was that for the very first time, people weren't saying it's just not about saving time. It might be about saving my life or preventing me from getting ill, which was not really in the math prior to this. Now we're seeing, with the airline struggles that aren't going to go away anytime soon, we're seeing, that the alternatives are unreliable, potentially pose health risks because COVID is now something we're going to live with for the rest of our lives, right? And the older you are and more vulnerable you are, the less likely you are to just want to be out in public, potentially catching the latest variant. So you've got those two new factors that were never there, and you've got a whole lot of folks that can afford to fly this way. I mean, I've actually heard people telling me that they would fly more if the system was just more reliable, right? Like what they're saying is that, the industry right now is struggling with service issues and everybody in the industry sees it. And so they're saying we're very selective. We want to travel on Tuesdays. We want to, do off-peak things because traveling on peak days is just painful. We're more likely to get disrupted even in the private aviation world. So as more aircraft come into the market and as we get, sort of ramp up our systems to be able to handle more volume, I think we'll still, I think that's the constraint today. It's not demand that's constraining this industry. It's supply. And I think that's likely to, I think the industry, the market will expand as more supply comes in and as more companies sort of adapt.
So that's going to lead us to our
growth
first question here our first poll in the webinar is for everybody out there. What is the biggest challenge you've had in running your FBO in the day-to-day doing your job? What has been the biggest challenge over the past, let's say 90 days? And we think we know a lot of these answers, but so we've got two hiring, which I would have bet some big money that that was the case. So I'm going to wait for a couple more answers to pop in, and then I'm going to share it with everybody, and we'll talk about a couple of those things, because for us to maintain these ramps, for us to even get to the point of, right now it's hard to revolutionize a ramp when we can barely operate it. So I'm going to share what I got, and then we're going to talk about some of these things. Everybody's talking about hiring. We're going to cover that here in a minute. Hiring, I mean, that one's not just an us issue, but I certainly have some commentary on hiring and where we are as an industry and kind of why we're in the boat we're in. Emily, you mentioned weather. That's one of the few things we can't control here. Where are you, Emily? And I'm going to guess some of you guys are also doing some ground handling, which I've been there, done that. The weather can really mess that world up. Morale. Patricia says growing in the industry, which we're going to tie back to the hiring and a path for some of these folks to go in. We mentioned before, like the size of the airplanes, how big the airplanes are getting. our infrastructure isn't growing. So we'll talk about that. I think one of the biggest things that we're dealing with today as an industry is the headwinds. What we're dealing with as far as the economy at large. Greg mentioned them. Inflation, higher interest rates. Inflation is having a huge, even before inflation really kicked in, we were already struggling with people. We were already struggling with salaries. Um, that's going to continue to have an impact on us, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. The another big part of what we're, the high interest rates. How is that going to affect us and what we're doing? Well, that's some of you guys mentioned infrastructure. Some of you mentioned hangars and ramp space. The interest rates are going to make it a little bit harder for us in the near term to build out infrastructure we need to get some hangars built. I mean, we are finally starting to see some of the supply chain stuff ease out a little bit. I wouldn't say it's good. It's just not as bad as it was. So, but add on top of that, just the interest rates, and it's just more effort for us to grow our infrastructure to meet demand and the size of the aircraft that we're dealing with. Nobody mentioned government regulation in there, which I thought was kind of funny because that's always a fun one. I mean, if it's not as easy to run an FBO today as it was when I first started. We have regulation seems to creep into more and more of the day-to-day operation of an FBO, and it doesn't make most of our jobs easier. On top of that, we've seen some government hostility just towards business aviation in general. You look at airports like Santa Monica, East Hampton on Long Island. The legislation in New York they passed the ban helicopters. For all intents and purposes, they're banning helicopters in New York, which is almost funny when you think about the advent of eVTOL and what that's going to do and how much that would impact a city like New York. Insurance continues to become an issue. Insurance, I think, is an interesting one. Insurance is one of the things that I think that we, as an industry and us as a company, can do a lot to help with. I think we're at the insurer's mercy with premiums because we don't necessarily provide enough data for them to make the informed decisions they do elsewhere. So we're all kind of lumped in the same bucket. And it's, if I'm running an FBO and my practices are top notch and I'm not damaging airplanes, I don't want to pay the same as the guy next to me. But there's no structure. There's no structure to address that. The airline side of the business has something called ASAP. I mean, I think there's an opportunity for aviation, and I think so we can layer that some of the technology that we have today to create an ASAP-like system on the aviation side to help us address some of the insurance costs and mitigate. We need to reward the guys that are doing the best jobs and keeping the airplane safe and not damaging things. And then, of course, there's the high fuel prices. Now, we've seen the high fuel. Let me go back to that, the ASAP like thing. It's something we've talked to NAT about. I'd love if anybody has any interest in that program, or join us in an effort to create an ASAP like program. I'd love to hear from them. Now back to the fuel prices. I mean, record fuel prices, as Greg mentioned, we're still airplanes are still moving. There's this incredible resiliency in the market and how we're doing despite these fuel prices. We're starting to see them come down. We're starting to see changes. I would love to have had some of the fuel folks on the call to talk about that and where they think the fuel prices are going to go. I think we have some on the call. If anybody wants to chime in with 2 cents on fuel, we'd love to hear it, what their thoughts are as I continue here. That's going to lead me to the next question, which was a lot of what you guys just brought up. So we know everybody's having problems with labor. Everybody, it's not just us. It's labor in general. But how much has that labor impacted your customer service levels? How have these shortage? I'm going to expand this question too a little bit to talk about safety too. I know for a fact I've been to FBOs where where they normally have a 3 wing walker rule in a hangar, they'll use 2 just because they don't have enough people to accomplish the task. So how has your labor shortages impacted your service and your safety? I might give everybody a minute to respond there. Ricky just said yes. D, all the above. Okay, we all got to talk to Joshua and figured out how he did that. Joshua, I don't know, I'm not sure where you are, Joshua, but they've been able to increase staff at the airport. Kerry had a good point. Kerry says, we're able to continue to provide the best service. It just gets exhausting at times. And that's a huge part of what's going on is that we're, on the people we do have, we're causing some burnout because we're just, there's people working 30 hours of overtime just to get things done. I mean, I'm sure they love it, but at some point you're just human. Service and safety is it's just harder and you're impacting morale. Yep. I'm gonna share these results with everybody so you can take a look at what everybody else is saying. I'm gonna talk about labor for a minute. We'll look at some macroeconomics here real quick. Labor, unemployment rate is 5.4%. One of the interesting numbers I think in the labor data is the employment population ratio is 0.57%, or 0.57. It hasn't been, so that's the amount of people that, as a percentage of population, that are working. It's the lowest it's been since 1976. So there's not, part of the reason we're having the struggle is not a lot of people out there looking for jobs to a large degree. And then our jobs are, now you have to commute to an airport. This whole remote work thing is real and it's not going away. So we have some in macroeconomic struggles to face when it comes to hiring. But then I'm going to pick on us as an industry a little bit. Because again, this is my personal opinion. I think we screwed up a little bit, almost. I'm going to ask you guys a question here that you can answer in the questions. Out of everybody here, how many of us do this because we love it? Aviation is a passion job. Almost every single one of us do this because it's just what we do. We love what we do. We have the passion for aviation. It's just part of us. And once you're in it, it's hard to get out of it. So as an industry, I think we've screwed that up. And I'm going to pick a little bit on some of the bigger guys here, pick on the bigger chains. We have to be careful as an industry not to turn our staff, our people, into a metric. We do this as an industry. The people that have these jobs do it because they love it, because they enjoy it. We need to embrace that, excuse me, and figure out how to make that work for us. Like, a lot of people were talking about morale and it's how it is suffering in our current environment. I mean, I can't stress how critical that is for us to fix as an industry, as all of us. There's a lot of reasons why this has happened. You go to business aviation as a whole, it's always been kind of, we don't want to talk about it. It's private, da, da, da. Well, we did ourselves a disservice because now we don't have people that know about it. I was talking to somebody the other day who works in aviation, and they were telling me a story about how when they were younger, they used to sit on bleachers at an airport and watch the airplanes. Our security, our just environment has taken that away from them. The fascination is harder to get close to get for them to catch that bug. And then once they catch the bug, we have to do more as an industry once they're inside to invest them in what we do, not only as a company, as an industry. I'm saddened by the number of people who I've seen leave our business in the past 2 years. Some really good people who we shouldn't have lost because they do love what they do. Um, I don't know necessarily the answers to that problem. I just know it's a problem, and as an industry, as a whole, we have to solve it. Yeah, we have some ideas, on channels and how to get people. Yeah, I'll use Embry-Riddle as an example. I've been up there a little bit recently, and the airline's presence at Embry-Riddle, the airline's presence, talking to the students and in the curriculum and at the college, is so much more pronounced than ours. And we tend to do that in a lot of different places. So I think it's important for us to start to embrace some of these channels, some of for the industry, the FBO side of the business, to engage more with the flight schools, the local colleges, just be more involved to find these people that have the passion and engage them. Um, you know, and then we'll go back to the bigger stuff. We're just going to have to pay everybody more. I hate, I know people don't like saying that, but there's not an industry that I know of that is escaping that reality right now. And we're talking about people who have, again, they have a passion for it. And it's not like a line guy today is the same as a line guy 10 years ago. I'd say a line guy today is much more highly skilled, much more highly trained, and they are damn good at what they do. I mean, a lot of FBOs even differentiate now line service techs between the more highly skilled guys that can tow and do other things versus fuelers. We've segmented them more because there's just so much more training and cost goes into getting these people to where we need them to be, that we just have to realize that investment that we've made in that person. And part of that is we need they're highly skilled, highly trained. We need to give them paths within our organizations to move up. I know there was a comment in the last poll on that about, where do I go from here? One of the interesting, in some conversations we had regarding this, there's a comment in AIN from the last survey that, it's been unusual for change. It hasn't been unusual for chains that relocate GMs. I mean, I was one of those GMs. I got moved to different places. But we're at the point where the line service techs are at a skill level and our employment is where it is, that they're relocating skilled line service techs from FBO to FBO to provide the skill sets needed to run an FBO. So, again, I'm not sure I know the answer to the question, but I just want it out there and if somebody has suggestions on how we do a better job of investing in these people who do this because they love doing it, I'm sure everybody would love to hear them. So if you want to drop a message in the chat on that, feel free.
Well, I wanted to chime in. Something I've noticed at the trade shows, for example, when I approach like an LST or CSR and I want to show them our technology, they always, their default is, you need to speak to my manager. And we talked about this in our last customer service workshop, which is, I believe that management needs to empower their teams to take initiatives to look at new things for their companies, because they're working the ground and they have the insight and a lot of this vetting processes that we do with even our management. And I think we're really good at doing this, Jim, is we always get feedback from all of our teams before we make any decisions. And the same thing should be applied at the FBO. Is the guys that are on the ground are actually the best people to research and vet some products that may be out there for you, instead of just leaving it up to upper management to decide at a conference room table. Your research is right there in front of you. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I've noticed that quite a few times, and then lately I've also noticed a lot of customer service managers and line service technicians approaching us just because they're genuinely interested in a product and they want to push it up to the top. So I think this whole revolutionize the ramp that we're talking about, like this is one of the things that we're talking about. We need to empower the people that are actually utilizing everything at the FBO.
I agree. So leads us to our next question. Now we have those struggles that we're dealing with on the ramp. It has impacted customer service. What is the single most, what do you think is the single most important factor for an operator, an aircraft, a pilot to choose an FBO? And we're going to give everybody a minute to answer that, and then we're going to talk about a study and why they actually choose an FBO. So we got a few pricing. Location is obviously a key factor. So I'm going to share these results, everybody. And we got a lot of pricing, got a lot of service. Tara, safety and service, but safety first. Love that. I'm going to throw safety into service because what do you think? I mean, is there any worse customer service than that phone call to tell somebody you broke their airplane? I mean, that is the worst customer service out there. A few people mentioned location, which is very true, and I'm gonna break that down a little bit further. I'm gonna use my time up in White Plains as an example. So I was at HPN. We obviously competed against Teterboro, to a lesser degree FRG, but I used to have this conversation regularly with prospects. Is that they would go to Teterboro, we tell them to come there, like, oh, but it's so far away, and then you'd have to go through the explanation of, yes, it's a little bit farther in miles. I'll bet you if you take them here, you'll get to your destination quicker. You have Teterboro traffic. You have all logistics getting from Teterboro to Manhattan versus White Plains getting to Manhattan. And we could do it in damn near the same amount of time. In that case, the big difference we had to deal with and what was a driver for customers' decisions was when they landed at Teterboro, they could see New York City's skyline. I could prove easily that you can get there, that I can get you there in pretty much the same amount of time. But the skyline was the difference. That was the thing that drove people. But let's look at this survey. And this is I believe this comes from AIN as well. Service, number one by far, with fuel pricing a distant second, as far as I'm concerned. At the end of the day, what that crew is looking out for, what they're trying to accomplish, is that their passengers are happy. For a charter operator, that means everything. That means them booking the next trip. For a 91 operator, obviously that's their boss. They got to make sure the guy's happy. That's their job. So there's a lot. The customer service part is critical to what we do, and yet here we are talking about how we're impacting that customer service part with the staffing issues and struggles we've had over the past 2 years, and no clear path yet to address them. It's funny, I asked that question if anybody had ideas on how to address where we are with staff and how to invest our folks, and I'm not the only one that didn't have an answer. Fuel pricing is important. I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, especially with the current fuel pricing, there are people going to make. You're always going to have the operators that make the decision on nothing but fuel pricing. And so be it. Especially with traffic where it is today, and we're talking about the stress levels that we have. I would gladly trade, and I've done this in the past. I would gladly trade some of my customers for some increased margin. I can make more money and do less work if I'm smart about fuel pricing. It's we'll talk about that in the fuel pricing seminar that we have next month. But that's kind of the logic there, and at the end of the day, it all comes back to excellent customer service. I'm gonna pop sort next slide. Next, we have another poll question here for you guys. So now that we've lived through these struggles, now that we've had these issues with labor, so much traffic, and we're trying to adjust. I mean, and even the weather you guys were talking about, stuff that's out of our control. What have we done to address? Like, how have we tried to improve our customer service in light of the challenges that we're facing today? In light of the labor shortages, more traffic, bigger airplanes, weather, our airport environment, regulation. What have we done to improve our customer service? I'm gonna give everybody a chance to answer that one too, and catch right back up. So John said employee empowerment, which is what we were just talking about. Man, that's golden right there. Yeah, and so John and Ricky both added training. Training is our attempts to train more of the customer service side than the technical side, guys. Is that what I'm reading there? Employee engagement is huge. Oh, Tara said they have 410s. I've done that in the past. I actually worked in an FBO in New Orleans where we had week on, week off at one point. Trying to get the staffing up, amenities. Yep. Man, I think Shelby has the best quote of this one. We invested in the majority of resources into our employees. When our employees are happy, our customers are happy. Man, you can't say that enough, right? I'll share these results so everybody can take a look at them. So a lot of this is, why are we here? As an industry, there's a few reasons. One of them is the reason we exist. One of them is because as an industry, we're technologically inept. I mean, if you look at the world around you and where everything is and how you interact with other organizations that you do on a daily basis, you do it through a lot of technology. We have none of that. We're just so far behind. That's something that we're personally trying to change, and we're going to talk about that a little bit here with what the stuff we're doing. There's a popular term bandied about Industry 4.0, and it has to do with industrial revolutions. The first industrial revolution was the invention of steam. The second industrial revolution was about using the machines that were invented during the first industrial revolution. It's how we built things better. We had machines. Then the second was production. It was the invention of like the assembly line and how we use those machines better, right? Then came the third industrial revolution. That was electronics, digital technology, and computers and all this stuff today. Well, now there's a parallel between the first and second industrial revolutions and the third and fourth industrial revolutions. The first was the machines. The second industrial revolution was the processes to use those machines, right? The third industrial revolution is machines, the computers, and the hardware. And now the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, because we have to call everything, it's the technology buzz name. There's an interesting video in this, in that link on the button. You guys can watch. I mean, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but it's just a good explainer of what Industry 4.0 is. But Industry 4.0 is this idea that, it's how we're going to use those machines and the processes we created in the third generation of the third version of the industrial revolution. It's how we use electronics, digital technology to do the things with the electronics better. Think about it. Think about this. what a computer is to a map is the actual map, right? That's the third industrial revolution. We went from a piece of paper to I can go on to MapQuest and print out my directions when I was going to drive. Think about how. So a perfect example is that leap from the paper map to MapQuest to Waze. Now, Waze is not just the map; it is an interconnected network of tools and people that drive you that drive a better experience. Now other people are telling me don't go down this road; it's closed. While meanwhile, an AI in the background is looking for another better route. Um, it's a smart, interconnected, pervasive environment is what Industry 4.0 is, and that's think about where we are today. We're still early 3, and now the rest of the world is 4 and moving past us. I'm the evangelist here when it comes to that. This is something that as an industry we really have to address. Is our just think about how being smarter in this component can help our staff, help our employees, give them more tools, give them more information to make decisions that they're not having to try to manually collect and manipulate, which is what we're doing today. So we do a lot of manual processes in this business. So I'm going to ask another poll question here. What do you think today takes the most time away from a customer service representative? What do they spend too much time doing? That can be devoted back to being a customer service rep, to customer service. Sydney mentions invoicing, manual tickets, billing, truck sheets. Carrie says people asking for discounts. Phone and paperwork. Yep. It's almost like if we had some automation in this industry, our people would have more time to do customer service, right? So I'll tell a quick story here. I was at MIA, obviously a very busy FBO, very busy airport. The system we used at the time was, one of the legacy systems, a system that did a really good job for a really long time. I'm not going to pick on it. It was, I used it for 20 years. And at Miami, when I got down there, one of the things I was charged with addressing was invoice errors and customer service. It just wasn't what we wanted it to be as an organization when I was with Landmark. So immediately, because of the complexity of the FBO, we already had this problem in White Plains. So going down there wasn't necessarily a new problem, but just the tempo made it the problem. I could not stand walking into the FBO and seeing my CSRs like this, head down all the time in a computer, because the systems and the tools we gave them were taking too much of their time. So, and to a large degree, that's where X1 came from. I mean, X1 as a product came from my frustration with, how we were doing things and just the lack of progress in doing things for all these years. Alan's talking about multiple programs. I mean, it's multiple programs. There's solutions even for that, well-built integrations where these programs talk to each other effortlessly. That is a huge part of Industry 4.0 is how programs are going to talk to each other in the future. So I just shared that. I'm going to get a little commercially here because again, I think we've done some things on our end that address some of these problems you guys just pointed out. So we've developed something we call X1 check-in. We switched the name a little bit. It was on here. We just updated that to check-in. So now with check-in, what we're doing is automate. Again, this is one part of what we do. Just it's these automations of little tasks over and over again that we're doing on a daily basis that are going to have the big impact, though, on our service levels, our employees' time to address, to be proactive in service. These are the kinds of tools that are gonna make that happen. So what this tool is at an FBO, we have these cool little devices, or you can just use a QR code. You guys can actually scan that QR code on the screen there, and it'll take you to a web page, or on your phone you could do it. So this is like the self check-in of we can self check in drivers, we can self check in catering, we can self check in linens. These third party services that are coming and delivering stuff to us at the FBO. It's okay. How do we automate that? How do we take some of that time back and do a better job of providing the information to our customers, to our staff, to the line service techs outside, the CSR at the front desk? So with the check-in, a driver can come in, scan a QR code, give us his information, tell us who he's here to pick up, and if we have a tail number in the system, we'll automatically pull that information in. So is that driver here question? You have the answer right at your fingertips all the time. The next step in this process is we're about to start handing this information out. So that information can then go directly to the operators, go directly to the person who made the request at the FBO. And they can know that the catering is there. The catering is at the aircraft. The catering, or the driver is there. The driver's on the ramp. All those can happen directly from here in the devices. The driver gets a text message when the aircraft is, let's say, 10 minutes out. It tells them your aircraft is 10 minutes out. Get ready. It's little things like this that are going to have a huge impact. And this is an example of the type of automation that, as an industry, we need. And again, this is stuff that's available, if you go to CVS, anywhere you go, this kinds of technology is in our day-to-day lives, where it's just not here. I forgot who it was that mentioned the multiple programs. Alan. So, Alan mentioned multiple programs. So within X1, you have direct access with no barriers to fuel links. You have direct access to FlightBridge. And there's more of that coming. There's more, listen, as an organization, we don't want to reinvent the wheel for every single tool that's out there. We want to connect all the tools. We want to make the experience seamless and give you guys the tools you need to make your jobs easier. I mean, and there's so much cool stuff we can do here as all these things start to get connected and everything starts to talk to everything else. Think about how much easier that's going to make our jobs, and how much more time we're going to have to provide that excellent customer service that's going to drive those operators back to our FBO. The phone's a big one. Obviously, there you get lots of phone calls. We're introducing, we've had this out in beta for a while. We're introducing the formal version here, I think around August 3rd, for a tool we just brought on called Customer Portal. So think of, again, this is a time thing. Think of all the phone calls you get from the flight school or from the big operator. On that, you're doing 10, 15, 20 fuelings a day for this operator, or for, in Cutter's case, I'll pick on them. They have, some where they're doing 100 fuelings a day on a flight school. So that's all time consuming calls. It's all effort. So now we've built this tool that, as an FBO, you can just give to that flight school, or you give that operator, and they could just come in and create their own fuel orders. And that fuel order, if directly flows to the line service tech in the truck. So that guy, and this is my career. This is how I started. I started as a line guy at Priester Aviation in Chicago. I was, given a clipboard and a fuel truck and told to go fuel a bunch of airplanes somewhere. And that was my training too, by the way. That was how we did it. And you just had to go out there and spend all day. We used to call it the Velcro suit. You strap on the Velcro suit, you get in that truck, you're never getting out. You had to run in to go use the restroom because you were just bouncing from one airplane to the next. And that was all over the radio, constant radio chatter for the next fueling. So, we think, again, these are the types of tools that we're trying to enable to bring to the FBOs to simplify and give them time back to do things. I mean, in all reality, Does the CSR have to be involved in the flight school fuel order? Does that phone call have to be made, or can we just put that directly in the truck for the guy? I would love if anybody has any thoughts on that. Feel free to chime in the chat while we go on to the next slide here and some of the other stuff we're doing. Oh, let me add to this too. This portal is not only, flight school is one example. It's also been designed. This screen is the flight school screen. There's another version of this if it's an airline operation. So think about from an airline operation, being able to have the guys in the airline office. And I know not every airline is going to use this. I know the airlines all stick to their own procedures, but we've found some decent adoption. We have an FBO up north that this is how they want all their airlines to do it, and they're basically told the airlines that's how they're going to get the information. And it's so helpful as an FBO. It's so helpful because now you have all this data of when you got the call, who you got the call from. I mean, this is all stuff we used to write down in the past. Now it's all saved as part of that information coming into you. And again, this information then flows directly to the truck. So the guy out in the field can see this and select that fueling and go to the fueling. So it's this type of automation, these types of processes, and whether they're ours or whether they're somebody else's, this is the direction as an industry is going to help us with where we are with this labor stuff. And I'm going to dare say it help morale for our staff. I'm going to let you guys answer this one while I talk. This is, radios. Again, this is talking about how we're going to revolutionize ramp, things that we can do differently than we're doing them today. So we've been working with a company called Relay that has these devices that I think are a game changer. And I'll call out the FBO that's been testing this out up. And you feel free to, reach out to us and we'll have Jim talk to you. These devices are a replacement for your radios. These are, they just let us do things that you could never do with a radio. It's as simple as push to talk. You press a button, you talk to whoever you need to talk to. I can press a button, ask to talk to somebody directly, specifically. I can get real-time location data from these devices. I can see where the devices are. We can broadcast information. So we can set it up so that, every time an aircraft is 15 minutes out, there's a broadcast that goes out, lets us know, November 1 X-ray is 10 minutes out. And we can broadcast that across these radios. Much simpler, much lighter, much easier. It's just thinking like this is what we're trying to point out. And the application of the customer service application of this is a whole nother aspect of the radio replacement. I mean, again, I don't necessarily think that radios are the current answer to our problems. And I would love for, so Chrissy, I didn't know you're there, Chrissy. So we have Chrissy Ross over at Pentastar who's testing them out, and they've had nothing but a positive experience. I think there's some game changer opportunity for us as an industry to adopt this, and we're working with these guys to bring this device to the FBO side of the business, to the ramp. They're actually designing a new device specifically for us, or for more of an outside application. But I think there's very interesting opportunity here, and again, it's more about looking at how do you do things differently than you did yesterday to impact our service levels, right? One of the other cool things we're doing along those same lines is the communications back to the crews. We've launched this X1 pilot app right now. Today, it just has the payment methods in it, which goes back to something else that we were talking about. Everybody's talking about invoices, right? Everybody's talking about the amount of time it takes to create an invoice. I'm gonna do a little commercial here too. When we built X1, we built it in a way to, that was a huge part of the problem, is the amount of time it took to gather the information for an invoice. So we've created this system now within X1 between the single point devices, our interface, and how everything works, how everything comes from a request, from the arrival and departure of the aircraft, so that the creation of that invoice is as simple as pushing a button to, because when they arrived, when they departed, they were here parking, that the lab was there. You even know the lab was done, who did it. You know, the GPU is plugged in. All that information is directly in front of you because now everybody's operating off the same sheet of music thanks to the single point hardware, the X1 interface. So now with Pilot, which we originally introduced as a way to handle contactless payments, it was COVID, but now think of an app in the pilot's hands along the lines of the portal and being able to do the same things, being able to feed that information back to the pilots. Think of the peace of mind of a pilot when he leaves your FBO, asks for fuel, and an hour after he leaves, there's a notification that pops up in his devices, your aircraft has been fueled. He doesn't have to worry about that anymore. That's not something he's going to think about. I mean, go talk to a pilot and ask him that exact question. Every single one of them will tell you that, it's a game changer. And that is it. So a large part of this, this how we're going to change in the near future is better information, more available to more users, if that makes some sense. I'm actually, we can pop this one up there. So this is our flight tracking, and everybody's got a flight tracking tool. How important today is that flight tracking tool to the level of customer service you provide? What impact does it have on the service? I mean, we're talking about simple things like you're able to see that the airplane's coming. You're able to, so you can be a little proactive in getting things ready because now you see it if maybe they didn't call in an air rank. So one of the other things we've done, and again, this goes back to multiple different systems, that concept of having to go look here, look there to get the information you need to complete the job. So what we've done is with our friends over at NF Systems, we've created a flight tracker that we've tied directly to X1. So the data is shared now between X1 Tracks, which is our flight tracking software, and X1 FBO, which is your FBO software. Again, this is an integration. This is just allowing things to talk to each other that have a huge impact on how we're doing things. So not only are it'll automatically link, it'll update times. So the times that the aircraft is arriving, once it finds that, we'll start pulling that in. It'll update the time for the CSR. It'll update the time for the line service tech on the ramp. Everybody will see or be able to operate off the same page of information at the same time. In the near term, with Tracks, now that we have that integration going, now that it talks both ways. So even within Tracks, even with the flight tracking software, you can see data from X1. You can see that you have a reservation for it. You can see that it needs fuel. You can see that it's going to customs. There's all kinds of information to flight tracking that's coming from X1. It's these connections that are going to drive the value in the future and allow us to do things just ever so slightly easier than we did before. And I mean, our ratings were overwhelmingly positive, 4.8. So 15 people told us that it was very important to their customer service, that flight tracking. So how important would it be if you can automate some of that and more of that information flows automatically? Nobody has to go look. It's right in front of you. We're putting that data in your hands. Again, this is all going back to the same, how do we impact customer service? And I want to say the technology and how the technology can impact the customer service and how do we use the technology to impact customer service? I'm going to touch on one more thing here real quick. This is another customer service thing. A few people mentioned when we were talking about this, amenities. Amenities are on that list. I think they were third on the list. And then we were talking about improving amenities to improve that customer service experience. Hey, some of us have done this. Some of us have improved amenities to try and soften the blow of the delayed fueling. It's just a reality of what we're doing today. So this is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to ask you how many times a day your caterer visits. And I know this is not an everybody question. Some of the smaller FBOs don't see that every single day. They're not there regularly, but the vast majority are going to be at least once a day. And this is a amenity solution that we've developed that I think can have a lot of impact and can do a lot for the relationship you have with your caterer, and also it helps the pilots to such a degree. And if anybody flies out there, they can speak to this pretty well. You can only eat so many bags of Cheez-Its. So we've created this. We've created a separate platform called X1 Cafe. Now, think of this. All it is a self-service point of sale machine. That's all it is. So a pilot can walk instead of going to a vending machine and getting a Coke and a bag of Cheez-Its, which I guarantee you they don't want or they're sick of, or it's just not the best choice. There's an opportunity here to work with your local caterer if they're there at least once a day, and it's for the cost of a small fridge and the terminal, the POS terminal here. You can provide an entirely different level of service and a different amenity and differentiate yourself in the amenities by working with your caterer to provide just some sandwiches, some parfaits, just something that's healthier, something that's a little bit better for the pilot, something that they would enjoy more than, again, that 10th bag of Cheez-Its. Well, I do like Cheez-Its. But, again, it's trying to think of simple ways to change the experience and to make visiting the FBO an experience. We talked about that a lot in the customer service webinar. This is to a large degree about experience, and here we're talking about how the technology creates the experience. Reading through the results. Yeah, I mean, one of the big changes with catering, since I've been doing this versus being at the FBO is when I first, I was in Sarasota, I think, and I was shocked at just the sheer number of like Panera orders and orders that were from non-traditional caterers that were coming in. I think that whole industry's under a little bit of duress, but again, as an amenity working, you're talking about finding a reliable caterer. This is an opportunity to create a relationship with somebody that makes them a more reliable caterer. That's in my 2 cents of that. We talked about this a little bit with Industry 4.0. We talked about how all multiple systems, how that is so much harder to manage, so much more to do. I'm going to let our friend here, for a millionaire, talk a little bit about connections. And I hope you guys can hear this. If you can't, let me know. If you can't, I'll skip it.
Helps so much with TFBO. I feel like I have to do my work just twice as much to integrate everything into TFBO, whereas X1 is already there. So it saves me such a huge step of having to waste time adding it to another platform.
So this is about those connections. This is about making it easier. It's already happening, and these are just the beginnings of those connections. So this is a large part of what we're trying to accomplish here. And if there's opportunities for connections, if you guys see that, I mean, we're always happy to work with anybody who can make your job easier at the FBO. I know we're past on time here a little bit. I'll try and I only got 2 more left. We'll talk about what's next for us as X1 and some of the stuff we're trying to do for the industry. I mean, we're adding, something we've been working for a long time is real estate module, or property module. Allows a lot of really cool features. I mean, one of the things we talked about earlier was that these planes are getting bigger, hangars are not getting bigger. It's becoming more important for us to really quantify the true value of our tenants, of our customers. What's their fuel purchases? How often are they there? Is the hangar space, what's the occupancy rate of the hangar space? There's a lot of very interesting data that we have to collect manually today. Within X1, we're building a way to collect that information automatically and automate some of those processes. And it's going to go do a lot of cool things other than inform us of our tenancy. Tenants to be able to tell us something's broken. There's a lot of really cool parts to our real estate component that we're doing. Location data, where an airplane is. We'll be able to tell you where an airplane is. We'll be able to tell you who moved it, when they moved it. Our X1 tracks, we're going to add a CRM to the tracks. So think about that. Your flight tracking data combined with your operational data. So that is this aircraft has been to us X amount of times, been to our airport X amount of times, been to us 5 of those times. Average uplift was Y. Its margin was X. We can start to make really well-informed decisions on what customers, what targets we need from a marketing perspective when all that data is combined. Some other things we're working on is, we're working on a data platform. I mentioned the ASAP stuff earlier, and then we're going to continue to work on integrations for you. Whatever tools that work, whatever tools that FBOs find are the best that they need to incorporate in their day to day. We understand we are the day to day as the FBO platform, and we will help you in whatever way we can to drive those integrations and to drive the efficiencies that we can gain for you from connecting to other data. I'm going to skip the last slide and just head off to the end. I want to thank everybody for your time. Sorry, I went a little bit over. I was babbling a lot there. If anybody has any questions right now, if anybody wants to stay on and ask some questions, more than happy to answer them. Monica, if you want to offer your parting shots there.
Yeah, just thank you again for joining us today. And as you can see, like from our workshops, everyone has a lot of knowledge to offer. So if you're an existing client, we are offering X1 approach training. If you want to clean up, spip up your X1 capabilities, or you have new staff maybe that you need help with training, we offer that. And if you are not an X1 FBO, you can reach out to me, and we can also do personal demonstrations, one-on-one demonstrations online. So I dropped in my contact information and some links in the chat. You guys are more than welcome to do that. And Jim, there was one question. It just appeared on me. There you go.
I just answered it for her.
Yeah.
So the question was, do you have any suggestions to let our customers know that this is for an FBO that's using X1 using our single point hardware? Chrissy wanted to know a suggestion on how to convey to the pilots that the guys are not on their phones chatting. So we've actually run into this before, and we found it is an excellent way to introduce the crews to the devices. When somebody says something, you go grab a device, you show it to them. Every single crew member we've done this with is like, wow, this is amazing. This is great. I could totally see how this is useful. And then once they see that and they understand it, they get why those guys have the devices on them. I mean, we have had that, we have had that question once or twice. Keisha asked about a link for the radios. We're going to send this presentation out after we're done here. And in a lot of those slides, there are buttons, and those buttons provide links to some of the things we talked about. So like the Department of Labor data is there. There's tons of other information, links to our site, links to the relay devices, all kinds of really cool stuff is in there. And again, if there's any questions come up outside of that you'd like us to answer, anything you want to know, Monica's posted that information to reach out to us. So I'd like to thank everybody for your time today. I greatly appreciate taking an hour plus out of your day to listen to me babble. And if there's anything at all we can do for everybody, just let us know. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye.